Get ready to listen, learn, and earn CE hours. This podcast features content from an accredited CE activity provided by Calibri Healthcare. Visit elitelearning.com/podcasts for accreditation and disclosure statements and instructions on how you may be able to earn CE credits.
I think in this remote world, we also need to be cognizant of one of the things that I think people often do, which to me signals you're not engaged, is they turn their camera off. It's like you're in this meeting for 30 minutes, whatever it may be. It's okay if you've got whatever going on in the background. I really need to see you. I need to see that body language. I need to interact with you. But when you turn that camera off, that really signals that you're shutting down to a certain degree. And we got to pay attention to that. I think we need to have cameras on, everybody ready to go.
Welcome back to episode 2 in our series on collaboration skills. I am your host, Leanna McGuire, for this Elite Learning podcast. And with us again are Bridget Sarikas and Kathy Scott, co-authors of Stupid Gone Viral. Welcome back.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
Today we're going to talk about something that is really important on so many levels, and definitely when it comes to collaborating, is empathy. Can you tell us what empathy is specifically?
Yes, it's something that we're really lacking in today's world. So that's why I think it's important we focus on this. But it's putting yourself in the other person's shoes and trying to understand where they're coming from. So it's different from sympathy. It's really trying to understand their thinking, their emotions, their responses to a situation, and recognizing in ourselves that their experience is going to be different than ours, particularly if they're of a different age or gender or race. I mean, so we all experience the world differently, and it's a willingness to dig in and really try to understand where they're coming from. And that's not always easy.
No.
Yeah, no, that's not always easy. I always say it's really recognizing someone else's humanness, right? I mean, sometimes we just forget that. We treat each other often like widgets and we just keep on going. It's like, take a moment. You know, that is a human talking to you right across from you. Let's recognize that humanness and the value that they bring as a person.
Right. And this differs from sympathy how? Just if you could just, I mean, fairly
Sympathy
obvious, but
totally,
just to be sure.
Yeah. Well, that's totally relating to the way they're feeling. You're feeling sorry for them. So it's not really understanding them as much as relating to their emotions. Like, I feel the same way. It's totally a different animal, but we often confuse the two.
Right.
And especially when we're working with people who their ideas are pretty radical to us. We don't necessarily want to hear what they have to say, and that's a good message to us to dig in a little deeper and recognize it, get receptive to what they have to say, because they're coming from a different path, and we need to hear it.
Yeah, I think that's great. Often, as Kathy said, people will say, in sympathy, I feel the same. And my question to that often is, really? Do you? Do you really know how I'm feeling? Because you haven't taken the time to really listen and understand. And, you can't say that to everyone, but you certainly can say that to a friend who is just passing that out. It just doesn't matter. It's like, oh, yeah, I feel the same. Yeah. Well, not really. So there's a lot of ways you can draw them into that conversation so that they are more empathetic.
Right. Are there key phrases that can help with empathy? Things that we should say instead of saying, oh, yeah, no, don't worry about it, or get over it, or whatever the case may be. We hear this a lot when it comes to, there's a lot of changes in healthcare constantly. And, we often hear things like, well, they just need to get over it, or this needs to just happen. So,
That would be what you don't say. They just need to get over it.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think it's powerful to say, just, I can't imagine what that would be like. I tell me more about that. That must have been really difficult. So it's really recognizing that this is hard for them or fun for them, whatever it was, but you're not owning it on your own. You're trying to find out more about them and relate to them, as Bridget said, as a human being, person to person. Wow. I've had one of these conversations recently where someone said, yeah, so-and-so's mom died. I'm sure she's so upset about that, and kept going into her own personal feelings versus relating to that person in their relationship and what was going on. So it's again, not about you. It's about the other person.
Right.
And I think, too, when you engage in that kind of discussion, it also says, I'm investing in you. I really am investing my time in hearing what you have to say. And the energy that comes from that, the goodwill that comes from that, is huge. You can almost see the temperature change in how that conversation goes.
I think the phrase "thank you for sharing" can be helpful too. Do you think?
Yes, as long as it's not said sarcastically. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, that wouldn't work. So what about, for example, when you're sitting around the conference table again? I keep bringing this back to somewhat of a team environment, and someone shares an idea. What's a good response in that environment versus face-to-face or one-on-one?
Well, it really is good to say thanks for sharing when it's authentic. And to add to that, that must have been difficult to share, or I never thought about it like that. Add to that some statement that is telling them that their statement had some value or impact is one way to do that. But when we also ask questions when people share an idea and build on their idea, wow, that's really powerful. Instead of one-upping, how many times have been in a meeting where everybody has to one-up each other? That just shuts the speaker down. Versus, wow, I love that idea. I never thought about it like that. And if you add on a blah, 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 some other piece of the puzzle, think about how powerful that could be. So build on others' ideas, give them credit for their ideas, and acknowledge that it was their idea. Those are all just
nice
skills.
Yeah, I think it's important for the leader, the team leader, and for other members of that team to also just be curious, right? I mean, come into these meetings with, that bag of curiosity right next to you, and you're ready to pull it out. And that will help you as you start framing your questions and working with others to pull them out and into the discussion. Because that curiosity, again, it can just create such a powerful energy in the group. And one person does it, the second, before you know it, everyone is actively engaged.
Excellent. I love that.
That's
so
fun.
Both of your statements really speak to helping other people expand their thinking, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And we need a lot more of that, because the status quo isn't really working for us very well in our organizations today. So we've got to encourage those unspoken messages to come out and have more discussion about those.
When we're talking about expanding others' thinking, let's talk about some specific questions that can help pull some of that stuff out for people. What might those be?
Well, often just watch the room for starters. You can see people thinking, you can see body language, you can see emotion. So it's okay to say to someone, it looks like you have something to say about this. Please share your thoughts. Or if somebody does share their thought, and you can always ask others, tell us what you think of this, or how would you go about implementing something like that? Ask another person and encourage them to pile on in a good way, to continue the conversation. And if somebody shuts it down, because we always have those people in the room like, no, I'm not going to do that, or they throw out a completely different idea, it's okay to say, wait a minute, let's come back to what Leanna had to say. I don't think we were done with that conversation. So you can redirect and get people to come back, and they'll learn pretty quickly that, yeah, we're going to behave a bit differently in this team, and hear what each other have to say.
Nice.
Yeah, I think body language is so important, but as a leader, you also have to be aware of your own body language in order for you to recognize others' body language, right? So, and the leader, all eyes are on you when you start talking. And so just everything you're doing, little, just micro movements are picked up and people react to that. I mean, you'd be surprised. So I think being self-aware is important first in that area and then you really need to pay attention to the rest of the team as well.
This all speaks to psychological safety that we talked about in the first episode, doesn't it? I love it. Yep. The empathy, encouraging, valuing other people's opinions, and pulling out, helping them to think through different aspects of what they're working on. So what are some examples when we talk about that skill of looking for the unspoken or the body language or whatever that may be? Can you give us some examples of what would not be very empathetic or supportive with body language?
Rolling your eyes.
Yeah.
No. Grimacing, looking around the room like you're bored. Just getting on your computer or your phone. I mean, those are all body language messages of, I don't really care, or I don't really want to hear this. But we see a lot of eye rolling in meetings. So I think that right there is just a bad idea.
That was well demonstrated.
Yeah, that was a great one. That was a perfect eye roll. But one of my huge pet peeves is when people tap their pen on the desk or their fingernails. That just is like, nails on a chalkboard to me. It's like, come on, stop that. Engage. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, yeah, that's really horrible.
I used to work with a guy that did that all the time. It was painful.
Yeah. Annoying.
Yeah. So anything that's distracting. Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
I sure did. Yeah. Any others that you want to mention? Body language. Is an arms or something the way you hold your arms?
Oh, yeah. Crossing your arms, or sitting back and you're crossing your arms. I mean, even, just having a general conversation with someone, when you cross your arms, boy, that signals to me, here we go. It doesn't signal a positive feeling at all.
Right. Now, go ahead, Kathy.
My favorite, though, is when the person who, they're very attentive to one person, and this is often because they're saying something that they agree with, and then the next person speaks up and they just kind of sit back and look around the room like, there she goes again. And that's a very clear message that the message was not well received. So don't do.
Yeah.
And it tends to make everyone in the room uncomfortable because they see it and they feel uncomfortable or maybe empathetic for the person that made the statement in the first place. And that I love the way when you rolled your eyes, because as someone who asked the question, of course, I know you and I found it funny, but if that was someone who was really asking the question, right. And we talk about virtual collaboration as well as in person, that can really take away that psychological safety in a big hurry.
In a nanosecond. You bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
Because in your mind, you're thinking, was that a stupid question? Maybe I should just shut up. And, you can see the withdrawal happen from people when that happens. So that's a really
I'm
good
sorry
point.
I did that to you, Leanna.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, Kathy. Just don't, let it happen again.
All right.
I think in this remote world, we also need to be cognizant of one of the things that I think people often do, which to me signals you're not engaged, is they turn their camera off.
Oh,
No, it's like you're in this meeting for 30 minutes, whatever it may be. It's okay if you've got whatever going on in the background. I really need to see you. I need to see that body language. I need to interact with you. But when you turn that camera off, that really signals that you're shutting down to a certain degree. And we got to pay attention to that. I think we need to have cameras on, everybody ready to go.
man, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a tough one. And even there's been situations where the speaker or the presenter will say, please turn your cameras on, and people still don't. It's just a real sign of disrespect, and there's no empathy there. That's the equivalent of a virtual body language that we shouldn't be using, right? It's literally shutting them out.
Yeah.
Wow, good point. Man, that can be a tough one. All right. So we've talked about empathy. Empathy ties into everything, doesn't it, basically? So I'm thinking
really
about
because
episode
collaboration
1.
is about people coming together and relating to each other. And it without empathy, it's pretty tough to get people to want to speak up and collaborate with each other. So you bet.
Yeah. And I like the way you earlier said that it's not just at work. It crosses the border to personal lives and community and pretty much everything.
Yeah, I think that's
really
right.
does.
Something interesting this morning, as I was driving into the office, there was a big sign right on the highway, and someone had put it up, and it said empathy. And I thought, wow, what a great reminder as I'm going into the office today. But I hope people paid attention to that. But again, something so out of the ordinary. It was just sticking on the middle of the side of the road, and I thought it was great. I thought we need a little bit more of that out there.
We need a whole lot more of that. Yeah, we really, really do. So again, I think I asked a question similar in the first episode, and I'm assuming that your answer is going to be the same in a sense. Is this the leader's responsibility, the team lead's responsibility to show empathy as an example? Or
If you want to have a collaborative team, yes. So if you are working with a group together, it's one thing if you have a bunch of individuals doing their own thing, but we've been talking a lot about teams. It's not just about, if you're working one-on-one, you definitely need to demonstrate empathy to whoever you're working with. But when you're working with a team, you're role modeling it for the entire group. And it's harder because you have more personalities in the room, you have more diverse views. And it isn't always easy. But like Bridget said earlier, they're always watching you as the leader. You are on stage all the time. And even when the meeting's over and you're out in the hallway. So yes, it is definitely a skill of leadership in today's world.
Yeah. And one that is lacking. So, and there's plenty of self-help, videos out there that can help you get in touch with that so that you can learn, right? I mean, again, you don't have to do it overnight because then it comes across kind of fake because you're just hurrying up to try to do something. So again, practice that. There's plenty of things, ways to get that help to do that.
Excellent. And that being said, for those listening, it is not entirely the team lead's responsibility. If you feel, if you have empathy, show it. Don't, because don't you think if the general group is not being empathetic, that doesn't mean let's go along for the ride.
For sure. And it's really easy to fall into, the cultural norms. So if it's, being hard on each other, cutting each other off, etc., it's really easy to get into that mode. But the beautiful thing about this is, you as an individual can really change the dynamics in the room. And it's
Yes.
so amazing and fun to watch. Just a thoughtful question to someone who hasn't had a voice, and see how it changes everything quickly. It's very cool.
Yeah, I think people need to understand that they are influencers. Don't go into that meeting, not thinking, that you can't add value. You can influence in the smallest of ways that can have the largest impact. So I think it's changing your mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get a lot of respect for that. I mean, like we've said a few times, you don't have to have a title to be a leader, right? That shows leadership.
That's right.
Okay,
exactly.
Great
right.
second episode. Thank you so much for joining us again on our series on collaboration skills. This episode, we talked about empathy, and we've talked about helping people expand their thinking in a different way. And then, skills for looking for the unspoken, and being conscious of how we're coming across with our body language as well as our words. So excellent episode. We will be back for a third episode. Bridget and Kathy will join us again, and we look forward to you joining us with that. And this is Leanna McGuire for Elite Learning by Calibri Healthcare.
This podcast featured content from an accredited CE activity provided by Calibri Healthcare. Visit elitelearning.com/podcasts for accreditation and disclosure statements and instructions on how you may be able to earn CE credits. Take your learning to the next level by subscribing to more podcasts on compelling healthcare topics.